Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time talking episode 8 of season 3 of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Many Heads, One Tail. And this is, I have to say, I think one of the strongest episodes this season. It really, stuff is really starting to come together. I mean, we're definitely inching towards the winter break. I mean, we've already seen a preview for the new season of Agent Carter, which I will be doing reviews for. Loved last season of Agent Carter. That was great stuff. But again, as I said, this is where things are really starting to come together. And let's just kind of get right into things and start talking about what's happening with the characters here. Let's do the simple stuff first. Fitz and Simmons, man, I really was praising Fitz to the high heavens last week, because of him, going out there and really helping Simmons to kind of get back the guy that she's in love with. And here, this episode, oh man, it's sort of like, well, I think I love him, and then I really love that Simmons is getting mad at Fitz because, well, why are you continuing to be so good about this? And that seems like a strange reaction, but if you think about it, like, she has to have this really big amount of guilt of going around finally realizing, yeah, she was in love with Fitz, and then going and falling in love with someone else. Now, not that she did anything wrong by doing so, but in doing so, she has hurt someone that she loved, and that's never fun. So it's all wrapped up in her own guilt, and just kind of wanting Fitz to give her a reason to be angry at him. I mean, that would be some sort of a relief, just ease up, a reason that she could ease up on herself a little bit. And then there's the whole thing with Fitz where he's like, look, I went through Aunt Will's file trying to find some reason to dislike him, and I couldn't find anything. So yeah, I mean, he does admit, yeah, of course I'm freaking jealous. And of course this leads into them kissing after all of these years, which was cool and all, but I really love how Fitz puts it at the end. It's like, you know what, we're cursed. And it's really hard not to look at it that way from his perspective, and probably from Gemma's point of view too. They had the chance to be something amazing together, and for a lot of their time with each other, they were both too blind to it. Fitz was the one who kind of realized it first, and then he could only spit it out when he thought he was probably gonna die. It's just the classic comic book soap opera drama. This, I mean, okay, people in tights with crazy powers punching each other in the face. I mean, that's all well and good. But, stuff like this is the real meat, the real juice of comic book storytelling. I mean, for years and years, I've read interviews with comic book creators where they talk about this stuff. And that's the term they use, the soap opera of it all. I mean, I'll give you a great example. A couple of years back, I was reading a collection of some old Spider-Man stories from the 70s. And yeah, of course, they were kind of dated, but, nothing's perfect. And, well, come on, something that's almost 40 years old is definitely going to show its age. But what was really great about it really was that soap opera of it all. It wasn't like there was literally once where I was going like, yeah, okay, Spider-Man is fighting the tarantula. I don't care about this. I want to see more about what's going on with Flash Thompson having to go off and be in the military. I want to see more of what's going on now that Peter Parker has slept with Betty Brant while she is legally separated from her husband. And oh man, that was some great stuff. That was some great stuff. And there's even this scene where Peter Parker is walking, basically doing the stride of pride down the streets of New York, having obviously just spent the night enjoying Betty Brant's company. And you're just like, okay, yes, she's separated from her husband, Peter, but you're like being an enormous jerk right now. I mean, it's great. That's what's really great, because that's the human element. I mean, the powers, the costumes, the fantastic stuff, that's all well and good. But having a messy emotional relationship, that we all can understand. Flying around and shooting lasers from our eyes, not so much. But that melodrama, that soap opera, That's what really, really puts butts in the seats, folks. Ahem. And yeah, let's just kind of go on from there. Let's see. Nothing really particularly huge to say about Bobby or Hunter this episode. Just kind of fun to see Hunter having to go out there and sort of pretend to be a hacker guy and make some vague and that whole thing about the red coats. That was a good, very very British sort of joke. I mean, okay, admittedly a cheap one, but it worked for me. And oh wait, no wait, I gotta say one thing about that whole Bobby fight. When she fights the Inhuman bodyguard, I'm like looking at the guy that's playing this dude. I'm like, wait a minute, I know this guy. I know this actor from somewhere. And then it hits me. He was on the stupid live action Crow TV show from years ago, but he's probably actually better known for the guy who used to be the host of was it Iron Chef America? The guy who was supposedly the nephew of the Japanese dude from the original Iron Chef from Japan. Yeah, that's the guy who was fighting Bobby in this episode. I'm like, oh, it's the guy from Iron Chef. Uh, oh man, that I mean, he's not a super famous guy. I can't even recall his name off the top of my head, and I'm too lazy to go look it up. But it's just like, oh man, I know who that dude is. That's awesome. So let's see. Nothing really huge to say about Daisy this episode. Just kind of nice to see her sort of employing her hacking skills in a cool way. Mac had some nice stuff this episode. I loved how he just sort of marched in there and was like, "Cool, so we need to talk." I mean, Mac is a guy who's pretty good about sticking to his beliefs. Now, his beliefs are at times questionable, but by God, Max sticks by what he believes in. He sticks to his principles. And even if you don't respect them, especially that whole, I really am not down with this Inhumans thing. The man does go out there and try and do what he thinks is right and look after the people that he cares about. And he's even willing to get up in Coulson's face about, like, hey, boss, we need to talk about who you're banging. And that takes some sack. And I like how Coulson is like, just like, F off, Mac. I'm in charge of Shield. I know what I'm doing. And Mac is like, no, man, this is crossing the line. You owe us some explanations. And then Coulson goes out there and lays out the whole thing about Shield. Like, we got to make sure we trust the ATCU. Even Mac is kind of like, oh man, I just got taken to school. And this, of course, leads to excuse me, what's going on with Coulson and Rosalind. And this is something that is oddly common to both the superhero and espionage genres, and that is the question of, can you have intimacy without honesty? Superheroes are always having to lie to their boyfriends and girlfriends about, hey, this is what I was doing while whoever the superhero was off saving the city. And in espionage, of course, spies are human. They want to try and have a little bit of an emotional connection with someone, but there's always that chance that the person is going to lie to you, going to backstab you. And Coulson and Rosalind have even turned that cloak and dagger game into a bit of flirting. And that part at the end where they're both like just arguing angrily at each other, I couldn't help but kind of feel sad for them. It's almost as if they've just, the nature of their jobs, their lives that they've taken on, has really robbed them of the ability to honestly tell when someone really does care about them. To recognize when someone has real, genuine feelings for them. That suspicion, it's always there. Now, granted, Rosalind turned out to be being played by Hydra. Melinda, Coulson's right-hand lady, was basically just turned out that her ex-husband was Lash, and oh yeah, she used to sleep with Ward, who betrayed the team, and yeah, so intimacy issues abound. But still, can you have intimacy without honesty? And it seems like they were both making a real genuine stab at having some sort of a real connection. But I say there's probably going to be some lonely nights in both their futures. And that's part of the price you pay for a life like that. Oddly enough, superheroes at the end of the day seem to be doing better at making this balance work than the good old agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's something to think about now, isn't it? Okay, so since we brought him up, I definitely did love that bit with Garner at the end where he's, back to his himself, very copiously not frozen, and Ward turns up and doses him with mustard gas. Now, this is a really great way of bringing what's going on with Ward and Hydra to the front of what's going on with the Inhumans. And yeah, I mean, Ward kind of maybe having Lash on a leash or at least under his control to some degree. Ooh, that's bad. That's really, really bad. That reminds me of that one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where, like, Angel, after he's been turned into evil, he's turned back into Angelus, and he gets his hands on a machine gun and he goes, "Vampire with a gun! Bad, that's not good," or something like that. So yeah, a Ward with an unstable inhuman killing machine. And man, I gotta say again, how awesome is it that Ward is a bad guy? I mean, really, having him turn out to be a bad guy back in season 1 is still probably the best move this show ever made. And Brett Dalton, this guy clearly loves the hell out of being able to be such a bastard. I mean, just all the stuff that Ward gets to do. He gets to kill those. He gets to fight. He gets to beat up these henchmen. He has that really awesome interrogation scene where he compliments the guy on, like, "Hey, congratulations on not breaking," and then almost certainly murdered those two guys. And it's like, oh well, I knew he had vaults. I just didn't know which one. And then that whole thing on the plane with the stewardess, and then just him having that fun messing with Andrew. I mean, it's just like, oh god, I hate this guy, but he's such an awesome character. I love it whenever he's around. They have officially put Coulson, May, Fitz, and Simmons into the mainstream Marvel universe. And oh man, do I hope they somehow down the road work in more, because I mean, he's really such a great character. He deserves to be in the comics. And I definitely did like that relationship he had with Malik, where at first it was like, okay, Malik tries to kill him, and then at the end of the day, they sort of agree to work together. Although I'm a little wondered, like, I don't think Ward's drinking the Kool-Aid on this one. It's like, well, why would I want to be the right-hand guy to some, effing alien or inhuman or whatever? I can be plenty damn powerful as the head of Hydra. So I don't think this alliance is going to last. Ward, yeah, he clearly is not interested in worshiping some inhuman. Now Malik is all down with that. And from what I understand, the idea of Hydra being part of an ancient conspiracy is something that is actually, at least fairly recently, introduced in the comics. In fact, an issue of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comic from a couple of months back hinted that might also be true of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think there was some guy who talked about, claimed to have been alive for centuries and talked about S.H.I.E.L.D. just being the latest iteration of something called the Order of the S.H.I.E.L.D. or Men of the S.H.I.E.L.D. But Coulson was like, I think you're just BSing me. And I love how Coulson was a history major in college. That totally fits with his character. But anywho, yeah, I don't think Ward is going to be down for this human worship thing. Now, obviously, they're probably talking about that weird critter that Simmons saw out on the alien planet. Now, is this somebody from the comics? If it is, I got no idea who it is. The only Inhuman that really strikes me as possibly being that powerful is the Beyonder, and frankly, the whole, oh yeah, it turns out the Beyonder is an Inhuman. I remember reading that comic, and I'm like, this is bullshit. This is stupid, stupid bullshit. So yeah, normally I like the stuff that Brian Michael Bendis does, but yeah, that idea was crap. So yeah, I got no idea, and as far as I know, I don't think Inhumans really lives like ridiculously long time. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not super up on that aspect of it, but as far as I know, they have reasonably average lifespans. But I could be wrong on that one. Um, let's see. What else? Anything else I want to talk about? Da-da-da. I guess I do have to say though, I like the idea that when Ward was going to try and turn Andrew into Lash, he used mustard gas. That was a big thing back during the First World War. They don't. It's kind of, well, obviously, uh, military gas technology has moved on. Military chemical weapons technology, I should say, has gone on, has progressed since then. But yeah, that was a big deal back in the First World War. In fact, my own great grandfather fought in the First World War, and he was left blind for 8 days after he survived a mustard gas attack. So yeah, mustard gas was not something you want to mess around with. So Ward is not pulling any punches on getting Andrew to turn into Lash. Let me see. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything I really had to say. Uh, man, guys, I am. Oh yeah, Rosalind found out that she was getting played by Hydra. Oopsie. Yeah. So good stuff there. And yeah, as I just said, this was a really good episode of the show. I had a lot of fun, and I'm probably more excited for this show now than I have been all season. Stuff is really getting interesting. And with that, I think I've repeated myself enough, so I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.